softly, almost a whisper. Relax now. Yes, just let yourself settle. Feel the way the chair or bed supports you. How the cushions or blankets curve around you like a safe little nest. Breathe in slowly, and out, again, in and out. The air is gentle here. It has no hurry, and neither do you. Let your shoulders grow heavy, your jaw unclench, your hands soften where they rest. Imagine every small tension melting, slipping away, like petals floating down a stream. And as you sink into this warm, quiet moment, I'll take your mind to a place where night is soft and kind, and time moves not in minutes, but in moonlight. Our story tonight begins behind a low stone wall, its edges worn smooth by centuries of rain and wind. The stones are cool beneath your fingertips, each one pressed into place long before you were born, when the village was smaller and the sky was even darker at night. Beyond the wall lies the Herbwife's garden. It waits in stillness, just as it has for so many seasons, each root and leaf knowing its place, its rhythm, its secret. The Herbwife, Mistress Allen, moves among the plants in her woolen skirts, the fabric whispering softly with each step. Her candle, tucked in a glass lantern, sends a small golden pool ahead of her, and you notice the air shimmering in its warmth, while the rest of the garden rests beneath the cool silver light of the moon. She is following an old way, a way taught to her by the women before her, and to them by the women before that. The Doctrine of Signatures, they called it, a belief that every plant bears the mark of its purpose, the shape of a leaf, the color of a flower, the curve of a root. A heart-shaped leaf might strengthen courage, a star-shaped bloom might bring dreams of peace, and you can almost feel those dreams waiting for you now. She kneels by a row of heartwood, its tiny leaves gleaming in the candle's glow. Snip, snip, the small sound of her shears drifts through the air, steady and soothing, like the ticking of a slow and kindly clock. You smell it even before she sets the leaves in her basket, a fresh green scent with the faintest sweetness. Somewhere beyond the garden wall, an owl calls, low and gentle. Its voice is much a part of the night as the stars above. The Herbwife smiles at the sound, for in this quiet hour, every living thing seems to speak in harmony. You follow her down a narrow path of moss. It gives slightly underfoot, soft and springy, and the scent rises with each step, earthy, grounding. She pauses beside a cluster of pale flowers, their petals opening wide under the moon. Star blossoms, she calls them. She says they grow this way only at night, so that the dreams they invite may be gathered fresh, while the world still sleeps. She leans close, and as she snips them, you notice the faint powder of pollen catching the lantern's light, golden dust in the still air. She hums as she works, an old lullaby without words, just a thread of sound weaving between the plants and the moonlight. It is not meant for you, yet it finds its way into your chest all the same, making each breath slower, each heartbeat softer. At the far edge of the garden, where the wall curves inward, there is a small wooden gate. It does not open onto a road or a field, but into a hidden alcove, a circle of stones, half buried in the earth, where the Herbwife keeps her most delicate plants. Here, the air feels different, cooler, stiller, as though even the wind respects the quiet work done here. Mistress Allen kneels by a patch of lavender, its long stems bending gracefully under the weight of violet blooms. She runs her fingers lightly along them, then crushes a single bud between her thumb and forefinger. The scent drifts up, and you inhale it without meaning to. Soft, floral, and just a little sweet. The kind of fragrance that slips behind your eyes and makes them heavy. She gathers the lavender slowly, each cut a careful offering to the night. The basket on her arm is filling now. Green leaves, pale blossoms, a scatter of golden pollen on the weave of the wicker, and still she moves with patience, as though time is not measured here by hours, but by the length of the moon's path across the sky. A faint breeze stirs, carrying with it the smell of tilled earth and wood smoke. Somewhere, far off, a hearth fire is still burning, its crackle faint on the wind. The sound makes the night feel warmer somehow, as though the whole village is wrapped in one long, woolen blanket. The Herbwife closes the gate behind her and returns to the main path, her lantern swinging gently at her side. Shadows shift over the garden wall, dancing in time with the soft sway of her skirts. She stops near a small bench, carved from the trunk of a fallen tree. Its surface is smooth from years of use, and the wood glows faintly in the moonlight. Here she rests her basket and begins to sort the plants. Heart-shaped leaves in one pile, star-shaped flowers in another, lavender sprigs laid neatly beside them. You watch her fingers work, quick but gentle, her touch so light the petals hardly move. Each plant she sets aside seems to breathe a little deeper, as though grateful to have been chosen. The candle in her lantern burns low now, its light flickering in the small glass panes. But the moon is full and kind, its silver brightness enough to see every leaf, every thread of the Herbwife's shawl, every soft line in her face. Somewhere inside you, a stillness begins to grow. Not an empty stillness, but the quiet fullness of a garden at night, where every root knows the soil is rich, and every blossom knows the dawn will come. And in this stillness, you are safe, you are warm, and you are very, very close to sleep. As she works, the fire crackles softly. Now and then a log shifts, sending up a brief flare of light that dances over the stone walls. Outside, the wind brushes past the shutters, just enough to make them creak faintly, like the garden is leaning close, listening to her work. She hums again, the same wordless tune from before, low and unhurried, each note lingering in the warm air. It seems to thread itself into the sound of the fire, into the smell of the herbs, into the slow rhythm of your breathing. She places the finished sachet into a small wicker basket beside the hearth, where others already rest, some tied with pale blue ribbon, some with green, each one a tiny bundle of night magic. From the hearthside bench, she lifts a mug carved from horn, its surface polished smooth. She dips it into the kettle, and when she lifts it out again, steam curls upward, carrying the scent of rosemary and mint. She takes a slow sip, eyes half closed, then sets the mug down. You notice a second chair beside the hearth, its seat covered with a folded woolen blanket. It looks as though it has been waiting there, empty but expectant, perhaps for you. The Herbwife gestures toward it without a word. When you sit, the blanket is soft beneath you, its faint scent of lanolin and sun-dried grass adding to the quiet comfort of the room. She reaches for another strip of linen, this one slightly larger, and begins to prepare a second sachet. This one for you. You watch as the herbs fall into the cloth, green and gold and pale purple, a little mound of dreams. When it is tied and ready, she places it gently in your hands. Its warmth is subtle, just enough to suggest the heat of the hearth, and its fragrance is soft but steady. Lavender foremost, with a whisper of honey and something green beneath. Mistress Allen smiles, and for a moment the firelight seems to catch in her eyes, making them shine like deep water. She says nothing, for in this moment words are unnecessary. The sachet rests in your lap, the fire breathes in the grate, and somewhere beyond the stone walls, the garden sleeps under the watch of the moon. Her voice is a murmur now. You are warm, you are safe, and you are drifting. The first time she let me gather them, Mistress Allen continues, I was clumsy. I plucked too many from one stem, and she stopped me with a look so gentle and so firm that I never forgot it. Leave enough, she told me, so the plant will remember it is whole. I did not understand then, but I do now. It was never about what we take, it was about what we leave for tomorrow. Her voice trails into silence again, and the fire pops once, sending a tiny ember curling upward. It fades before it reaches the chimney. She leans forward, taking your sachet from your lap. She holds it in her palms a moment, eyes closed, as if pressing some unspoken blessing into the bundle. When she gives it back, her hands are warm, and the scent of the herbs seems richer now, more alive. This, she says softly, is your key to the green language tonight. Breathe it in as you rest, and the plants will tell you their oldest stories. The thought is comforting, like being promised that the night itself will watch over you. You imagine lying beneath a great canopy of leaves, moonlight filtering through. The air full of scents, so soft they almost feel like music. And somewhere in that stillness, voices speaking without sound, in a tongue only the heart understands. Mistress Allen rises, and the candle on the mantel flutters in the shift of air. She steps to a small wooden chest near the wall and lifts its lid. Inside are neatly folded quilts, their colors faded, but their stitches strong. She draws one out, a patchwork of greens and browns, stitched into shapes that look, if you tilt your head, like leaves drifting on water. She drapes it over your shoulders, and the warmth sinks in at once, as though it has been waiting to meet your skin. Sleep will come soon, she murmurs. The garden has already sent for it. The room seems smaller now, not because it has shrunk, but because it has become a single, gentle world. Fire herbs, the soft creak of the chairs, the steady hush of the wind at the shutters. You feel the weight of your own breathing, how it rises and falls like the turning of a tide. Even the Herbwife's movements seem to slow, until the line between her voice and the sound of the fire is almost impossible to find. Her words come like the last notes of a lullaby. You are safe here. The night is deep and kind. The garden remembers you, and the plants are already speaking your name. The Herbwife rises from the bench, her basket cradled in the crook of her arm, its contents now a soft tangle of greens and blooms, like a quiet bouquet gathered from the moon itself. Her steps are slow, deliberate, and the mossy path seems to lean toward her feet, welcoming her as an old friend. You follow, each step taking you nearer to the small timber stone cottage, tucked at the far edge of the garden. Its thatched roof glows faintly in the moonlight, a patchwork of straw and shadow. Smoke curls upward from the narrow chimney, thinning into the night, until it becomes one with the stars. The wooden door is worn smooth, where countless hands have pushed it open, and its iron latch feels cool to the touch. She lifts the latch gently, and as the door swings inward, a sigh of warm air greets you, scented with drying herbs, the faint sweetness of honey, and the earthy comfort of wood smoke. Inside, the room is dim, lit only by the glow of the hearth. The fire is small, its flames low and steady, licking quietly at the split logs. A blackened kettle hangs above it, and now and then you hear a soft bubble, the sound of water just beginning to simmer. Bundles of herbs hang from the rafters, their shapes casting leafy shadows on the walls. Sage with its silvery leaves, rosemary like green needles, chamomile blossoms turned upside down, their small yellow heads sleeping in the warmth. Mistress Allen sets her basket on a sturdy oak table, its surface etched with years of use, scratches from knives, rings where mugs once rested, a few faint stains of crushed berries and spilled tinctures. She begins to work without hurry, laying out each plant in neat lines, examining every leaf in the flicker of the firelight. Her fingertips are stained faintly green, her nails clean but worn, as though they've known soil and plant sap all their life. She reaches for a small wooden mortar and pestle. The wood is smooth with age, and as she begins to grind a few lavender buds, you hear the gentle crunch, the soft whisper of crushed petals releasing their scent. It drifts through the air, a warm floral cloud that curls around your senses, drawing you further into stillness. In a small clay bowl, she mixes the lavender with heartwort leaves, a pinch of dried chamomile, and just a drop of honey from a jar wrapped in cloth. Her hands move slowly, as though each stir of the mixture is a verse in a lullaby only she knows. From a shelf above the hearth, she takes a narrow strip of linen. Its weave is loose enough for fragrance to pass through, but strong enough to hold the herbs. She spoons the mixture into the center, folds the cloth carefully, and ties it with a thin cord of twine. It becomes a small, fragrant sachet, the kind she tucks beneath pillows, where its scent can drift into dreams, lulling even the most restless sleeper into a night of unbroken rest. Mistress Allen moves to the hearth, where the kettle still hums with quiet steam. She takes down a small clay cup from a shelf, the glaze on it worn thin in places, a sign of many nights and many hands. From a pouch hanging by the mantel, she shakes a measure of dried petals into the cup. They fall with the faintest rustle, like a whisper passed from one ear to another. A trickle of hot water follows, and the petals swirl slowly, their color deepening as they bloom again in the heat. She sets the cup in front of you. The steam drifts up to meet your face, a mingling of lavender, chamomile, and something soft and green you can't quite name. The scent seems to find its way into you, quieting the small, restless corners of your mind that still held on to the day. Sip slowly, she murmurs. The herbs are listening. They will carry your thoughts where they need to go. The first taste is gentle, barely sweet, with a warmth that seems to spread from your mouth down into your chest. The second taste is deeper, like stepping into the middle of a summer afternoon with your bare feet in the grass. By the third, your eyelids feel heavier, your shoulders looser. Mistress Allen watches, not with impatience, but with the steady calm of someone who has waited for many things to bloom. When the tea is gone, she says, you will close your eyes, and the garden will open its gate to you, no matter where you are. You finish the last sip. The cup makes a soft clink as you set it down. The Herbwife takes it gently, placing it beside the kettle. Then she lowers the lantern's wick until the flame is barely aglow, and the room is bathed in the warm breath of the fire alone. Close your eyes now, she says. Breathe, and step with me. You obey, and at once the sound of the fire fades into something softer, like the rustle of leaves, stirred by a midnight breeze. The smell of herbs grows stronger, not the drying bundles from her rafters, but living plants, rooted and awake under the moon. When you open your eyes again, you are standing at the gate of the garden, only now, it is not the small wooden gate you saw before. It is taller, arched, woven from living vines that glow faintly from within, as though moonlight has been braided into them. Mistress Allen stands beside you, her shawl trailing lightly against the moss. Step through, she says, and when you do, the air changes. Beyond the Herbwife's cottage, the moon lifted higher, pouring its pale light through the drifting veil of cloud. It silvered the stone wall, touched each leaf with a quiet glow, and turned the garden paths into threads of milk-white silk. You follow her step for step, listening to the faint whisper of her gown's hem as it brushes the dew-wet grass. The night is so calm now that even the sound of your own breathing feels like part of the gardeness music. The Herbwife moves toward a small bed at the farthest corner of place, half hidden by hawthorn branches. She bends low, brushing the thorns aside with a careful hand, revealing a cluster of plants with curling leaves like tiny closed fists. She leans close to whisper, as though the plants might startle if spoken to too loudly. These are for courage, she tells you. See how each leaf curls inward, as though it's holding fast to its strength. That is their secret. She takes out a small pair of shears. The snip, snip, comes slowly, each cut deliberate. She pauses between each one to lay the stems gently into her basket. And the fragrance rises green, peppery, a hint of something almost lemon bright. You feel it slip into your breath, settle warmly in your chest. Somewhere inside, your shoulders loosen a little more, as if the plant's courage is seeping into you as well. Come, she murmurs, there is more yet to see. The hawthorn branches swing closed behind you as you follow her along the narrow path. At one bend, the light from the cottage windows catches in a jar that hangs from a branch overhead. You stop to look. Inside, fireflies drift lazily, their gold-green light pulsing in slow rhythm. The Herbwife smiles. They are not trapped, she explains, only resting. In the night, they will choose to leave when they please. For now, they lend their glow to our work. As you continue, the ground beneath your feet grows softer, spreer. Moss carpets the path, muffling every sound. The air here smells cooler, like stone after rain, and you can hear the trickle of water somewhere ahead. When you reach it, you find a small basin carved from a single block of granite, its edges worn smooth with age. Moonlight gathers on its surface, trembling with the ripples made by a steady drip from the overhanging rock. The Herbwife dips her hands into the water, cups it, and drinks. Then she offers some to you. It will cool your thoughts, she says. The water tastes of mineral and night air. As it slides down your throat, the tight places in your mind begin to loosen like knots coming undone in slow, patient turns. Your breath deepens, The sound of the dripping becomes a lull, each drop falling like the soft tap of a finger, urging you toward rest. When you leave the mossy path, you find yourself in another part of the garden, where the plants seem almost to watch you. Their blooms are star-shaped white, pale blue, faintly purple, and they sway as though greeting you without wind to move them. These, the Herbwife says, are for sleep, not the kind that comes too quickly and leaves you restless, but the deep kind that holds you safe until morning. The stars speak to them, you see, and the plants keep those dreams safe in their petals. She shows you how to pluck them without bruising, holding the stem between two fingers, giving the gentlest twist. The blossoms fall into your palm with no sound at all. You place them into her basket, and she hums a tune, so soft and low that you feel it more than you hear it. It moves through the garden like mist curling between branches. A small wooden bench waits beneath a trellis of honeysuckle. She gestures for you to sit, and when you do, the scent rises in slow waves, honey sweet, with a whisper of something deeper. The Herbwife sits beside you, her basket on her lap, and together you listen to the garden breathe. Somewhere, an owl calls, low and measured. Somewhere else, a fox pads along the edge of the wall, unseen but felt in the careful hush of its steps. The Herbwife takes a sprig of the sleep blossoms and tucks it behind your ear. Tonight, she says softly, when you close your eyes, remember the shapes of these petals. Imagine them opening in the darkness, and you will find yourself walking here again, in your dreams. The fire in the cottage crackles faintly, calling you back with its warmth. But before you leave, she leads you once more to the granite basin. You look into the water, and instead of your reflection, you see the moon floating in a pool of silver. The Herbwife's voice drifts beside you. The moon keeps the garden's time, she says, and it keeps yours too. It knows when you need rest, and it will keep watch while you sleep. You return to the cottage, the door opening with a soft wooden sigh. Inside, the fire glows in the hearth, the air heavy with lavender and thyme. She hangs the basket on a hook, the blossoms swaying gently. Then she pours you a cup of warm milk infused with a single leaf from the courage plant, a few petals from the sleep flowers. She hands it to you, her fingers warm against yours. Drink, and let the garden follow you into your dreams. The milk is sweet, the heat of it curling into your chest. Your eyes grow heavy without effort. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you hear the snip of shears, the drip of water, the low hum of her voice, each sound folding around you like a quilt of night and leaves. You close your eyes, and so the Herbwife lingered among her moonlit rows, her heart beating in time with the soft rhythm of the earth's breath. She moved with the patience of seasons themselves, her hands speaking in unhurried language that only the soil truly understood. Beyond the stone wall, the world felt far away, its markets and noise and hurried voices muffled by the garden's living hush. Here, there was no need for haste, only the next gentle task, the next leaf to gather, the next scent to breathe in. The path before her curled like a ribbon between tall stalks of angelica, their pale blooms glowing faintly. She traced the tips of her fingers along the leaves, their edges cool and slightly serrated, whispering their promise of protection for those who carried them. Her candlelight trembled in a sudden sigh of wind, and she paused, letting the flame sway and settle again. The shadows in the herbs shifted like quiet dancers, each plant bowing toward her as though acknowledging her care. She stopped before the foxglove bed, tall, proud spires lifted toward the stars, each bell-shaped blossom holding a secret note of the Doctrine of Signatures. These, she knew, were for the heart. Their pattern, their gentle pulsing within the wind, reminded her of a heartbeat's steadfast rhythm. With careful respect, she plucked a single bloom and held it close, the petals cool against her skin. From somewhere deep within the garden, an owl called Wanzalo, steady sound that hung in the air like incense. The Herbwife's eyes drifted closed for a moment, breathing in the scent of foxglove, lavender, and the faint musk of damp soil. In the stillness, her mind began to wander, not with sharp thoughts, but with the flowing drift of a dream. She remembered the first time she had been shown the doctrine by her grandmother and elder, with hands weathered by both love and toil. who spoke in hushed tones as they walked a garden much like this one. A plant tells its own purpose. Child, her grandmother had murmured. Look closely. The heart shaped for the heart, the star for dreams, the sunburst for vitality. Now, she stood in that teaching, tending not only the plants, but the quiet legacy woven into each stem and petal. She turned toward the corner where star-shaped blooms of borage tilted their faces upward. They were soft blue, the color of a calm dawn. She knelt, feeling the earth's warmth seep through her skirts, and brushed her fingertips over the petals. These were for courage, the doctrine set for steadying the spirit against shadows that lingered in the mind. She snipped several sprigs, laying them gently in her basket beside the foxglove. The candle guttered again, and this time she shielded it with her palm, feeling the soft heat kiss her skin. The wind carried with it the faintest trace of rosemary from the far border, a scent sharp and clear, like memory made fragrant. Slowly, she began her walk back toward the little wooden door at the rear of her cottage. The basket was half full now, the herb scents mingling into something that could only be called the perfume of night's healing. Inside, the hearth still held the faint red glow of banked embers. She set her basket down on the work table, where an open book lay, a worn manuscript of herbal remedies, its ink faded in places by years of use. She set the foxglove apart, knowing it must be handled with great care. The Herbwife moved quietly, as though the walls themselves were listening. She tied the borage into small bundles, ready to be hung in the rafters to dry. She scattered lavender heads on a clean cloth, the scent rising in a soft plume as each one landed. From the hearth, a faint crackle drew her over. She added a log, the fire catching slowly, filling the room with a deeper warmth. The candlelight played upon the shelves jars of preserved petals, vials of oils, bundles of sage and thyme. The room seemed to hum with the gentle presence of everything living and growing. She poured herself a cup of chamomile infusion, the steam curling upward in slow, silver ribbons. Lifting it to her lips, she felt the warm liquid slide over her tongue, carrying the sweet whisper of fields and sunlit afternoons long past. Outside, the owl called again, and she smiled faintly. The garden was sleeping now, roots deep in the dreaming soil. She knew she would join it soon, sinking into her own rest, the sense of her gathered herbs lingering in the air like a lullaby. Her eyes drifted to the window, where the moon's pale light pooled upon the sill. She imagined it pouring into the garden, wrapping each plant in silver threads of peace. Somewhere in that light, she felt the presence of her grandmother, still tending a garden beyond time's reach. With slow, deliberate movements, she tidied the table, brushed a few stray leaves into her palm, and whispered a good-night blessing to each herb she had gathered. When she finally climbed the narrow stairs to her bed, the scent of crushed lavender clung to her hands, mingling with the faint resin of rosemary. She lay down, pulling the quilt to her chin, and listened first to the slow beat of her heart, then to the deep silence of the sleeping house, then, beyond it, to the gentle breath of the garden under moonlight. Her breathing matched its rhythm. Her body sank into the mattress as roots sink into soil. The candle's flame guttered out, and in that moment, she felt herself becoming part of the garden's dream. It is richer here, full of scents, so layered you cannot separate them. Sweetness, earth, a cool hint of water. The path beneath your feet is softer than moss now, something like velvet, something like cloud. The plants are taller than you remember, some reaching as high as small trees. Their leaves shift in a wind you cannot feel on your skin, as though they are breathing to their own rhythm. You pass a row of heartwork first. Its leaves shine silver at the edges. And as you draw near, you hear the faint thrum of a heartbeat. Not your own. Not Alan's. But something slower. Steadier. The sound seems to settle into your chest, and you feel an unshakable sense of safety, as though nothing in this place could harm you. For courage, Alan whispers beside you, so that even in your dreams, you will walk unafraid. Farther on, you find the star blossoms. They are brighter here, each petal tipped in gold, each center pulsing with a soft light. As you bend to see them closer, The air around you shifts, the edges of things soften, and the sky above seems to bend nearer, like a great hand cupping the garden. For peaceful sleep, she murmurs. They will keep away the shadows. One bloom leans toward you, and when its petal brushes your hand, you feel a cool wash of stillness flow into you. You walk on. Lavender lines the edge of a shallow pool, where the moon's reflection ripples without a sound. The scent is stronger than ever, but never cloying. It is the kind of fragrance that feels like a sigh. You kneel beside it, and when you touch the water, rings of pale silver spread outward, each one carrying with it a small memory. The warmth of the hearth, the hum of Alan's voice, the slow snip of her shears in the night air. Beyond the pool stands a single tree, its trunk slender and white as bone, its leaves long and narrow, each one catching the moonlight and holding it as if unwilling to let it go. The air beneath its branches feels lighter, as though every worry you carried here has been set down without you noticing. The dreamkeeper, Alan says, resting her hand against a bark. It watches over all who sleep under its gaze. The path circles back toward the vine-woven gate. The plants seem to bow as you pass, their leaves swaying in a rhythm that matches your breath. At the gate, the air shifts again, the rich layered scent fading to the familiar warmth of the hearth, the soft earth underfoot becoming the wool blanket on your lap. When you open your eyes, you are back in the chair by the fire. The sachet rests against your chest. The room is exactly as you left it, and yet, you can still feel the dream garden breathing somewhere just behind your thoughts. Mistress Allen says nothing more. She simply nods and turns her gaze to the fire, as though she, too, is watching the garden from afar. And so, as the moon climbed higher, its light spilling like milk across the stones, the Herbwife lingered at the edge of her hidden garden. She stood very still, one hand resting lightly on the worn handle of her shears, as if listening to a sound no one else could hear. The wind had softened now, a barely there breath that stirred the tiniest leaves, and in that hush, the entire garden seemed to exhale. She moved slowly to the patch where the heart-shaped leaves grew. Their deep green surfaces shone faintly, catching moonlight in a way that made them look wet, though they were perfectly dry. She brushed her fingers over one, feeling the faint texture of veins beneath her skin. For courage, she whispered, though no one was near. For the bravery to speak truth. For the strength to face what waits in the morning. She plucked a handful, careful to leave enough for the plant to thrive, and slid them into a small woven pouch at her waist. The leaves gave off a scent like fresh rain on warm earth, grounding, honest, steadying. From there, she wandered toward the star-shaped blooms. These were a pale, almost ghostly blue, their 5 points stretching outward like the arms of the night sky itself. The Herbwife leaned close, inhaling deeply. Their scent was delicate, almost shy, a drifting whisper of lavender and something softer still. For dreams, she murmured, and for rest, without shadows. She cut them gently, the shears making a small, satisfying snip, and laid the flowers in her basket on top of the heart-shaped leaves. Behind her, the cottage waited, its single candle still flickering in the window, casting a faint, warm halo. The sound of the fire's quiet crackle reached her even from here, as though urging her to return, to let the night deepen around her and close its arms. But she wasn't ready yet. There were still roots to check, roots that grew best under the gaze of the moon. She crossed the narrow path to the far corner of the garden, where taller plants bent in the night wind. Their thin stalks and tiny white bells swayed like dancers in some slow, secret procession. She knelt, the damp earth cool against her knees, and pressed her fingers gently into the soil. It crumbled softly, smelling of dark wood and rain. Beneath the surface, she felt the knobbled shapes of the roots firm and ready. With the tip of her knife, she freed a few, shaking the soil away and holding them up to the light. The roots were shaped almost like small hands, each with crooked fingers. According to the Doctrine of Signatures, such a shape meant they could help with ailments of the joints, easing stiffness and soreness. She brushed them off, tucked them into a cloth, and tied it shut. Above her, the sky was now crowded with stars. They shone through the branches of the old apple tree by the wall. each point of light like another tiny star-shaped bloom in her garden. The Herbwife sat back on her heels, breathing in the mingled scents around her, the grounding leaves, the dreamy blossoms, the sharp, clean roots. This was her world, the quiet tending, the patient harvesting, the understanding that every leaf and petal had its place, its use, its gift to offer. She didn't need crowds or noise or the bustling marketplace. Here, behind her low stone wall, time moved slowly, and each moment carried its own soft, complete weight. When at last she returned inside, the warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. She placed the basket on the table beside the candle and began sorting. Each herb had its own jar, labeled in her careful hand. She laid the heart-shaped leaves flat between cloths to dry, their green deepening in the firelight. The star blooms she set in a shallow dish, letting their fragrance drift freely into the room. The roots she bundled and hung by the hearth, where their moisture would leave them slowly. Outside, the wind moved once more, a gentle sigh through the garden, rattling the leaves in a kind of farewell. The Herbwife poured herself a cup of steaming chamomile from the kettle, cupping it in both hands. She sat near the window, looking out at the moonlit shapes beyond the glass, and felt the day slip from her shoulders. One sip, then another, and her eyes began to close not with the sudden drop of exhaustion, but with the steady drifting of someone lulled by all the right scents, sounds, and silences. Somewhere beyond, the garden breathed on, and the moon watched over every leaf, and in that stillness, you too might find your breath slowing, your thoughts softening, as if you were there in that little room. The scent of drying herbs all around you, the sound of the fire's steady heartbeat at your side. The night had grown deeper still, and the candle in the window leaned toward its final hour, its flame small and steady, like a quiet thought that refused to fade. Alawan sat at her wooden table, a clay cup of Valerian tea between her palms. The warmth seeped into her fingers, and the steam rose like silver threads into the cool air. Outside, frost began to gather along the garden wall, its delicate crystals catching the moonlight as if a net of stars had fallen from the sky and draped itself over the stones. She sipped, and the taste was earthy and sweet, a reminder of roots pulled from deep soil, washed gently in the brook's whispering water. The Herbwife closed her eyes, letting the flavor carry her back to summer afternoons when the leaves were still green, and the bees had sung their drowsy songs among the lavender rows. But winter was not a thief. It was a keeper. It cradled seeds in the dark, let them dream beneath the earth, and wrapped the roots in a blanket of frost and patience. The garden knew, as Alawan knew, that all things waited in their own time. From her shelf, she drew a small jar filled with dried petals, blue as dusk, star-shaped and crisp between her fingertips. These were borage blossoms, gathered on a morning when the dew had still clung to every leaf. They were the herb of courage, and she had saved them for a night such as this, when someone far away might need the strength to face a shadow, or to step into the unknown without trembling. As she worked, she spoke softly into the hush, her words weaving between the sound of the kettle and the rustle of her skirts. No one was there to hear them, save the sleeping herbs and the moon outside. But the words seemed to listen to themselves. Curling in the air like the steam from her cup, she told the story of the heart-shaped leaves of violet, how they were gathered for love and loyalty, how they could be steeped into a cordial that brought comfort to the lonely. She spoke of the starry blooms of chamomile, each one holding the night's calm in its golden center, how their tea was like drinking a fragment of the sky. Her fingers moved without hurry, pinching, sprinkling, folding the petals into linen pouches, each tied with a twist of green thread. She would leave them in the baskets outside her door come morning, for those who came quietly, who did not wish to knock, but needed something soft to hold in their hands. In the chimney, the fire gave a little sigh, and a red coal blinked itself into ash. Somewhere far in the meadow, a barn owl called, its voice a low and hollow sound that made the frost-laden air shiver. Alawan reached for her quill and parchment. She wrote not a letter, but a list, one that began with rosemary for remembrance and ended with time for courage in cold seasons. Between them were names of plants, both common and rare, each one with a note beside it, reminding her when it must be sown and which moon would bless its first growth. She smiled to herself, for the garden was more than soil and leaves. It was a living memory, a keeper of seasons, a map where courage grew beside kindness and patience bloomed in quiet corners. She knew that even now, beneath the frost, the roots were listening. They would remember her voice when the thaw came, and they would answer with green shoots and blossoms that mirrored the stars once more. Outside, the moon began to lean westward, and a faint light, not yet dawn, but the thought of it, touched the eastern edge of the sky. Alawan took one last sip of her tea and closed her eyes, hearing in the stillness the gentle rustle of the garden's dream. "You can rest now, too," her voice seemed to say without speaking, "for the roots are safe, and the seeds are sleeping, and there is time yet before the light comes." And with that, the last candle flickered once and went out. And so the garden whispered on, even as the frost grew silver on its edges. Some herbs, the Herbwife knew, would rest now, their green hands curling into the soil like sleeping children. Others, the winter herbs, seemed to relish the cold, drawing in the moonlight and the stillness, growing slower but deeper, their roots thickening with quiet strength. She moved among them with a little clay bowl cradled in her palms, its rim warm from being set by the hearth earlier. Inside, a salve of melted beeswax, rosemary oil, and a touch of pine resin. She would tend the frostbitten leaves, coating them gently, just as she would an injured hand. Somewhere, a barn owl gave a single low call, a sound that felt like the opening of a page in an ancient book. The Herbwife tilted her head to listen, letting the silence after it sink in like cool water over stone. Every sound tonight seemed to belong, woven into the fabric of the garden's dreaming. A wind rose, not sharp, but deep, the kind that lifts your hair as though it wishes to read your thoughts. It rattled the bare rose canes against the wall, their thorns casting tiny shadows in the candlelight. She smiled at them. 4 roses in winter are not gone, only resting. She knew where their roots ran, and how their sap would rise again come spring. She reached for a little cluster of thyme, its leaves so small they looked like green freckles in the candle's glow. Under the Doctrine of Signatures, thyme's tiny, tenacious leaves spoke of endurance, and of the courage to persist, even when the path narrows. She pinched a sprig and rolled it between her fingers, inhaling the scent. Sharp, sweet, clean. The smell seemed to rise all the way to her eyes, clearing her vision. She took a deep breath, letting the cool night air in through her nose, and the thyme's perfume linger there. You might breathe with her now, inhaling slowly, holding the scent in your imagination, and letting it drift out again with the exhale. Above, the moon had risen higher, its light silvering the edges of every stone, every frost-tipped blade of grass. It painted the world in shades of pearl and shadow, and the Herbwife's garden seemed, for a moment, to belong as much to the sky as to the earth. In the far corner, behind the sheltered row of lavender, lay the hidden part of a hidden garden. A little alcove only she could enter easily, where a short arch of woven hazel branches formed a natural gate. Beyond it grew plants whose meanings were for her alone to keep. She knelt before the gate, brushed away a scatter of dry leaves, and lit another candle from the one she carried. Its flame caught and shivered, then steadied into a small, determined glow. Inside this alcove, the air felt different, quieter, as though sound bent around the place. Here were the plants that did not simply heal the body, but the heart, the memory, and sometimes, the dreams. She touched the velvet leaves of sage, their shape like an open hand, welcoming, protecting. She moved to the small cluster of white stones, their petals so pale they seemed carved from milk. These she used rarely for the most restless sleepers, those whose minds ran like hares at night. The candlelight made their petals shimmer faintly, and she whispered to them, as though greeting old friends, "Sleep in moonlight, wake in sunlight." You might imagine now that you are standing just behind her shoulder, feeling the warmth of her candle, the cool of the night air at your cheek, and the deep, living stillness of roots beneath your feet.